a sutra is comes from the Proto-Indo European language group, which is earlier than Sanskrit and English. We all descend from that language group. So a sutra comes from this original sound called sieve, and it means a string or a thread, things that hold things together. Sieve, that which sews and holds things together. It's related to suchi, meaning needle or list, and suna, which means woven. So these woven together teachings were once memorized, and then it weaves together the boundless teachings of the Dharma. Are you listening? And the word scripture, sometimes we say the sutra and scripture are the same, just to make it easy on us who are used to hearing the word scripture. But interestingly, they're a little bit different. So scripture comes from the Latin scribere, meaning to write, but before that, from the same Proto-Indo-European root, scrib, which is related to the concept to cut. So this connection to cutting likely refers to the action of the early kinds of writing where you had to dig into stone or wood or something to make your mark. So this connection to cutting is how writing was done in ancient times. And carpenters now, if you ever work with carpenters, they scribe. They still use the word scribe to mark wood if they're going to fit into unusual places. So, in Tori Inji's vow, he wrote, "When I look at the real form of the universe, all is the never-failing manifestation of the mysterious truth of the Vedas." Can you see that? He saw that, and he wanted to remind us that that is a way to look at this universe. So we're in the middle, actually we are in the middle of exploring Dogen Zenji's writings. Dogen Zenji wrote a treasury of writings for us, and he called it a treasury of the true Dharma eye. So we're on another fabulous treasure called the Mountains and Rivers Sutra. So the Mountains and Rivers thread of teachings. And also the immediately following treasure is called Chanting Sutras. So chanting teaching. So I'll talk about that a little bit today too. So this Mountains and Water Sutra is really a treasure of Buddhist teachings because it allows us to actually be in the presence of mountains and waters in the way that they really are, in the way that they really are manifesting Dharma, the truth of the world. And it's become quite popular. Do you know the poet called Gary Snyder? Yeah. He took this Mountains and Rivers Sutra. He's a Buddhist student and teacher, and he took this and turned it into a day-long art event with drums and songs and poems and actions, trying to weave together, to sew together this world that we live in as a Dharma world. And especially he lives in the mountains, so he understands and has experienced being in the presence of mountains. How many of you have a recent memory of being next to a big, big mountain? Okay. How many of you have a little bit more dim memory of being next to a mountain? How many love mountains? Yeah. How about waters? We have some great waters. We have this bayou that weaves us together is amazing, and sometimes appears rather calm, but often appears very powerful. So when Tori Enji wrote this piece, he extended our understanding even to beasts and birds, but he didn't mention mountains and waters. Isn't that interesting? Beasts and birds. So something special about Dogen Zenji, what happened when Zen arrived in Japan, is a real amazing appreciation, understanding of mountains and waters. This is our Zen heritage. And it's partly an appreciation of this treasure, partly an appreciation of mountains and rivers, but it's not about mountains and waters. It's telling us that mountains and waters are teaching us. So there's a distinction between being about something and just pointing at something. So it's not meant to be, I'm going to give you a lot of geographical or geological information about mountains. It's just mountain as mountain, the suchness of mountains. So Dogen says, I will explore in detail the meaning of mountains and rivers as the very body and speech of the Buddha. The natural landscape that surrounds us here and now is the expression of the ancient Buddhas. The mountains and waters are at once preaching a sutra that reveals the Dharma and themselves putting that Dharma into practice. Themselves, as Dogen says, becoming wise people and sages. So a mountain is a being, putting it into practice. So one of the difficulties to overcome in understanding or relaxing into a teaching like this is that we don't necessarily understand that we ourselves are Dharma. We ourselves are walking around being a teaching of the Buddha. The person sitting right next to you is walking around being a teaching of the Buddha. And as Torienji said, a person that is really difficult is walking around being a teaching of the Buddha. But Dogen says, if we do not sense that we ourselves are scripture, it is hard to see that mountains are scripture. So which direction do we want to work? Work on understanding ourselves, work on understanding the mountain. What's blocking? What's impeding our understanding? So a famous phrase which Dogen says often is, if you don't understand your own walking, you can't understand the mountains walking. You've heard that, right? The blue mountains are walking. How many people have heard that? Oh, good. The blue mountains are walking. Now how many people have heard that? These mountains and waters of the present are the statements, the Dharma teachings of the old Buddhas. Each is abiding in its Dharma position. And each of us is also abiding in our Dharma position. And the suchness of a mountain, you kind of know it when you see it, right? Special mountain-ness. You know it. This is an amazing being. And to relax and not try to limit it with our understanding is allowing the mountain to be the mountain. So, can we listen to a mountain? And how do we open to listening to a mountain? How do we open to listening to each other? This is a huge challenge. I have a really good example. Recently, one of our beloved members launched into a story, and it went on for a long time, and somewhere and I was just listening, and somewhere well into it, the person said, I hope I'm not going on too long. And I said, that's okay, I'm going to use it in my Dharma talk on Sunday. And he was very happy. Because when you have that chance, there are other kinds of talking with our friends and listening, and that's more like the streams coming together. They talk for a while, you talk for a while, you might even bubble over each other and interrupt each other. That's a perfectly valid way of talking. But sometimes there's the necessity to just listen, so that you allow it to go where it wants to go. You don't know where it's going. And this story that I heard was about things that I had no idea about, i.e. Auditioning to be on the prestigious high school state band. I had no idea what this is about, so I couldn't interrupt. I had to open my, and it was very interesting, so I opened my listening mind and didn't know where it was going, let it go where it went, and I learned a lot. I also learned that, and in our conversation after the story was over, it's a fairly brutal process. I don't think it should be that brutal. I mean, we have all been children, so we all had to learn about winning and losing, and that's what sports is about for children often. You have to learn how to lose, learn how to win, but it can be a little more humane than this audition practice, at least as it's practiced in Texas. So learning how to win, learning how to lose, learning how to be first, learning how to be second or third or last, but also learning about fairness and cheating and all those sorts of things. These are really important lessons. And we learn that at an early age. We learn what to value. So that was all going on in this story as I listened, as I let myself open to hearing about band auditions. My mind went over into this mountain region of fairness and honesty and valuing each other. So that can happen when we learn how to listen. And I'm sure all of you really do that all the time. So this is a kind of listening that we do with each other in respect and love of each other, but it's also the kind of listening we get to develop with mountains and forests and paths and oceans and rivers. We're listening, we're in the presence. And so this practice that we do together here, learning how to let our minds relax and not let early ideas fill it up, but be in the presence with kind of a relaxed mind. This is the kind of mind that we use when we listen to mountains and rivers and rocks. It takes courage to listen. Another etymological digression here. The meaning of courage, the meaning of discourage. Do you know what courage comes from? Many of you know. Heart. 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 It comes from, recently it comes from Old French, and C-O-R-A-G-E, courage, maybe, meaning heart as the seat of emotions. Hence, spirit, temperament, state or frame of mind. Heart, innermost feelings, temper. Modern French, courage, courage. From Latin, coraticum. Source of Italian, coraggio. Spanish, coraje.
Corazón.
Well, coraje is the courage. Yeah. And from Latin, cor, heart. And the Proto-Indo-European root is curd. So, but like scripture, this earlier root in the language that divided into Sanskrit, English, and all the Romance languages, curd. Curd, meaning heart, forms the base of words like accord, cardiac, cardio, concord, core, cordial, courage, credence, credible, credit, credo, credulous, creed, discord, grant, heart, miscreant, quarry, record, and more. That curd sound is at the heart of it. At the heart. Isn't that amazing? That word, this concept of this place being the seat of emotions is buried in our language and buried in all of these words. Isn't that fantastic? So this is considered to be the seat among our ancient ancestors of all of those good things, not here. Whatever was going on up here, it's here where you feel it. Dogen writes, although we may say that mountains belong to the land, actually, they belong to those who love them. When the mountains inevitably love their owners or their visitors, the sages and worthies, and the eminently virtuous enter the mountains. So I should read that again. When the mountains inevitably love their owners, the sages and worthies enter the mountains. And when the sages and worthies live in the mountains, because the mountains belong to them, trees and rocks flourish and abound. Trees and rocks flourish and abound. For Dogen Zenji, rocks are living. And the birds and beasts take on a supernatural excellence. This is because the sages and worthies have covered them with their virtue. We should realize that the mountains actually take delight in the worthy, actually take delight in the sage. One of the sages who delighted in mountains in China was Luopu, and this is one of the sources where the Blue Mountains are appreciated. He one time instructed his group. Are you okay? He one time instructed his group. So I'm being Luopu now. You must directly realize the source outside of the teachings. You must directly realize the source outside of the teachings. Don't just rely on the words. So this is a big theme in Zen. The words we study, they really bubble along and inform our understanding, but we must rely on something outside the words. So one of the group stood up and said, what is practice of the inconceivable like? Meaning outside the words. What is practice of the inconceivable like? Luopu said, the Blue Mountain is always walking. Then he got up and left. So it takes courage to stay in the presence of teachings like this. And as Dogen said, we can't understand the mountain walking unless we understand our own walking. Okay, so some of you, have you been seeing the people outside walking? Can you see them? I love it when I'm listening to one of our visitors. Don't tell them. Like I'm sitting where Alberto and Bobby are, and I get to watch the walkers out there. Isn't it beautiful? Can you see them if you were to cheat? So, do we understand our own walking? One of the real significant hallmarks of being a human being is walking. It's what we suddenly started doing some thousands of years ago. Walking, swinging our arms, stepping. And people are still studying it. And now there are body workers who say people have forgotten how to walk and things like that. And we put on big old shoes that really, really diminish the senses of touch. And there are as many nerve impulses and as much information available through the feet as there is through the hands. But we put on these, I myself have these big blocky shoes that are so soft, and very little information is getting through to the bottom of the feet. So this walking experience used to be a total body experience for us. Tons of information coming up through the ground, all of that support and the air and so on. So when you look at those people, they generally have on special clothing that marks them out as, I've got a purpose to walk. Put on my special clothing here. I'm not critical, not at all critical, because I do it too. I pretty much make sure that I'm going to put on a marker that I'm out for a walk. But part of the theme of this particular treasure and the next one is we don't have to have a purpose. Mountains don't have to have a purpose. They aren't something that we have to use. And the waters aren't something that has to have a purpose. And our walking doesn't have to have a purpose. So when we see people walking outside, as you're watching them, if you can see some of them, remove the purpose and just see them as walking. Watch them as walking. humans walking, or go into a situation where you just see people walking. It's quite beautiful. It's just what humans do. It's the suchness of being a person, to walk. And then after we see other people, maybe we can get a hint of our own walking. This is just what a human being does. Take this space, move around in it. It's being a human. A few years ago, I guess now several years ago, because it was before there was a dog here in residence. So that would be before Baku. Those of you who remember Baku. Before Baku, we didn't have the residents here, Vicky and Royce, who's still on vacation, and me. We would walk without an identifiable purpose. So if you have a dog, you can go anywhere because people aren't worried, you know. But if you don't have a dog, people will cast their eyes at you like, why is she in my neighborhood? She's just walking. And she's looking at our house. Why is she looking at our house? And so several years ago, Royce and Vicky and I were each on different walks, doing different things, and we had the same experience in the same week. Somebody yelled out their car window at each of us. And they yelled something at Royce, and he couldn't hear them, but it was yelling at him because he was walking on the street. And I can't remember what the person said to me, but what they said to Vicky was very funny. She was walking along, and it was summer, and they said, "What are you doing?" So it must have been a Zen master. Because there is that Zen koan where the Zen student is sitting in meditation, which is also just an expression of the suchness of the self, just like Vicky was being an expression of the suchness of a human being walking. So this person was sitting, and their teacher walked by and said, "What are you doing?" And the student said, "I'm not doing anything at all." And the teacher said, "Well, then you're sitting idly." And the student, who would become a great Zen teacher, said, "If I were sitting idly, that would be doing something." So that was a future Zen master, and the teacher praised him or her highly for that kind of presence and that kind of answer. And then for us, down to this day, why do we sit? It actually isn't a purposeful activity. It's us expressing ourselves. But sometimes to keep on the cushion, we have to have a purpose. Like, for instance, I can't stand up because it will bother my neighbors. That's why it's good to sit in a group. So I do want to make that connection, that point. If we understand our own human walking, then we get a glimpse of understanding a mountain walking. We are always walking, Dogen says, and the blue mountain is always walking. So the next treasure in the treasury of the storehouse is called chanting, kankin. It's about this human activity, and we talked about it a little bit this morning. For those of you who were there, I remind you that, this activity that we do when we're chanting a sutra, weaving together the ancient teachings and the suchness of our lives, is just a praise. It's just like a song. We're just chanting. And for various reasons, the tune that we sing is pretty simple. We try to listen to the people around us. We try to adjust our harmonics to the people around us. We try to adjust the volume to the people around us. But we're actually just praising. It's just a praise. And when we do the Heart Sutra, it's just a praise. Or Genjo Koan, which we did this morning. It's just a song of praise to this world. We actually aren't using it as a study course. We have class. So this song of praise is an offering. And when we're together in a zendo like this, we're getting all the offerings of and support of our neighbors and the mountains and the road. And through the chanting, we're sending it back out in praise. That's what's happening. So think about this chanting that we do together as maybe multi-directional, but think about it really as an outgoing offering. And you'll hear it coming in through the ears, and then it goes out. Offerings of praise. It's an offering of our togetherness, and it's an effort to stay together in chanting. And then we offer that effort that we're making to stay together in chanting back out. We put our hearts into it. I'm going to go back to Luopu. But first, this world needs a lot from us. It really needs a lot from us. So we come here, I live here for refuge. So I hope that when you come here too, there's also refuge for you here. A little bit of nourishment and a refuge in this really challenging world. So this chanting and the effort we make to chant together or bow together and acknowledge each other's presence and so on is our offering to each other. So back to Luopu. Remember Zen Master Luopu? He calls his group together. I'll read you again that first dialogue. He said, "You must directly realize the source outside of the teachings. Don't grasp principle within words." So this is a verbal teaching, and it's part of, I would say, what Dogen wants us to experience when we're in the presence of mountains and waters. This is an opportunity to directly realize the source outside of words. And so in that earlier dialogue, a monk asked, "What is practice of the inconceivable like?" Luopu said, "The blue mountain is always walking. The bright sun doesn't shift its orb." So, in a way you can say he was saying, outside of words, and probably there was a big blue mountain right outside. So now he's called his congregation back together. He's about to die. He called all of his assembly together, and of course, asked them to speak. At that time, the head monk said, "The blue mountain is always walking. You don't hang a lamp in broad daylight." Sound pretty good? Luopu did not approve. He was dying, and he wanted something different, not just a quote from his own teachings. So he made it clear that he didn't accept that. He wanted to make sure his group could carry on this great matter. So they had a little dialogue, and it got very complicated and very esoteric, so I'm going to skip to his final line. He said, this is his final teaching, "The boat of compassion is not rowed over pure waves. Over precipitous straits, it is wasted effort to set out a wooden duck." Okay, that's why I didn't read the intervening part. However, this is a super important teaching. The boat of compassion is not rowed over pure waves. Over precipitous straits, it is wasted effort to set out a wooden duck. Okay? The first sentence is pretty straightforward. We can get there. The practice of compassion, the boat of compassion. Often Avalokiteshvara is standing, the goddess of compassion, on the left up there. Often she's on a boat. She's almost always associated with water. The boat of compassion is not rowed over pure waves. What's it rowed over? It's rowed over difficult waves in raging seas. The boat of compassion is needed. Raging seas, difficult water, floods, fire. That's where the boat of compassion is rowed. And then the next sentence, over precipitous strait, it is wasted effort to set out a wooden duck. So if you were in China, you would understand immediately what this means. Of course, you have to be in China of like 8th century, but so you're again on a boat and on a river, and then on rivers you'll reach places where there's choppy water. And it's hard to decide how to steer your boat across the choppy water. You're fine, we're fine. We're poling through a calm bayou, and then suddenly it hits, what do they call it? Rapids? Hits rapids. How do you tell which direction to go? You don't want to risk your boat of compassion and all the people who are riding with you. How do you tell? So in China, they had a piece of wood, probably a pretty big piece of wood, because sometimes they call it a wooden goose, but I like wooden duck better. So they take a piece of wood and toss it into the river and watch how it travels. And then you can steer your boat. Oh, there it exposed a rock there, went down there. So that's called a wooden duck. So now, the boat of compassion is not rowed over pure waves. Over precipitous straits, it is wasted effort to set out a wooden duck. Why is it wasted effort to set out a wooden duck? Why would that dying Zen teacher say that to his group? Because in our lives, we can't set out a wooden duck. There are rapids and challenges and illnesses and loss and joy and happiness and surprising fun ahead of us. We can't set out a wooden duck. We can't set out a pre-life to live our life so we know how to avoid it. So we may as well know that we can't set out a wooden duck. We're facing it just as we are, just with the suchness of who we are, and we're going to face these straits. Don't you wish we could have a wooden duck? Not really, because then it's like having people tell you the end of a movie, although I like that actually. So. But for life, they can't tell you where it's going. You can't know. Or if we do, we think we know. We just think we know. We're going to be surprised. So Luopu just is getting us ready. The boat of compassion is not rowed over pure waves, over precipitous straits. It is wasted effort to set out a wooden duck. We just live our life. Can I tell you what I then wrote?
Yes.
Oh, thank you. It says, how to end this Dharma talk? I don't know. You all have that experience, right? But what I then wrote to myself is the chanting of sutras, the teaching of Dharma and compassion, all this is being done by the mountains and waters endlessly. We also, in our walking and in our courageous adventures through our lives, without an advanced wooden duck to show us the way we live our lives is also the teaching of Dharma. The way we live our lives is also the teaching of Dharma. And Dogen Zenji and all the other wise Zen folks are forever telling us that this is so, and it is so.